The Palm of the World, genre, ancient swordplay. Author, unknown. After listening, please comment on your feelings, and don't forget to subscribe to listen to the latest episode. Volume 3, Chapter 11. Wolf Howling Valley Master. He stood silently in front of the cove door, with a thought in his heart. Cogmaster's actions were really not worthy of people's respect or kneeling. But up until now, the person who steps into the cup has not been invited by the owner. Right outside the door of the valley, 6 large words were clearly engraved, Lang Hukak, Land of Samsara. Those 2 lines of words were a clear warning. Those who, for fame and fortune or out of curiosity, gathered and rushed into the mountain valley, a place filled with poisonous gas, only to die on the spot, whose fault is that? Kim Phi thought for a long time, finally knelt down and bowed 9 times, then slowly stood up. At that moment, the stone door in front of him slowly opened. He walked straight inside. Appearing before his eyes was a deep tunnel. Every 3 meters in the tunnel, a night pearl hangs for illumination. Pearl light shines on the cliff, reflecting a variety of shimmering, incredibly brilliant colors. Coming here, he no longer felt any fog or toxic vapor. Kim Phi walked forward quickly, and at the end of the tunnel, he came to a small stone room. The inside is lavishly decorated, no less than an emperor's palace. The 4 sides of the cliff are filled with paintings and couplets of famous people. In the middle of the stone room was suspended a huge red pearl, emitting a dazzling light. Under the paintings, there are many bookcases, making Kim Phi even more fascinated. He can't help but wonder, who is the owner of this cave? He was still thinking when he suddenly heard laughter coming from the cliff. Before the laughter ended, the cliff automatically cracked, revealing a door. From inside, an old man with an elegant appearance, long beard, white hair, wearing a blue AO dye, slowly walked out. The old man looked very gentle, walked steadily. His eyes were just brighter than normal people, other than that there was nothing strange. He observed Kim Phi and muttered as if talking to himself, "After waiting for more than 100 years, I finally met the right person." Ha, ha. Little boy, what's his name? Kim Phi was extremely surprised. Is it possible that an old man who looks like he doesn't know martial arts is the owner of Lang Hukak, a place where wanderers are terrified when they hear the name? If that's true, then this old man must have unparalleled wisdom. Otherwise, how can one live leisurely in the middle of a mountain valley full of such poisonous miasma? When he saw the old man asking a question, he respectfully replied, "The junior is Dang Kim Phi. May I ask what your noble senior's name is?" The old man stroked his silky, extremely beautiful white beard, smiled and said, "The old man's title has long been forgotten. If you don't mind, just call me Lang Hukak Master." Having finished speaking, he raised his hand to invite Kim Phi to sit down, then gently clapped his hands. Immediately, 2 beautiful women dressed in thin robes, with small hands and slender fingers like bamboo shoots, lifted the jade tray and slowly walked out. At first glance, their steps were leisurely and slow, but in the blink of an eye they arrived in front of them, at an incredibly fast speed. Even though they were so fast, their body movements were still leisurely and steady, without any signs of haste. As soon as he got closer, Kim Phi smelled a faint scent like musk-like orchid, making people ecstatic. However, he was not a lustful person. His demeanor was still calm as usual. The 2 young girls put down 2 cups of jade milk, bowed slightly, and immediately left. Lang Hu Valley Master smiled and gently asked, "What's the matter with the little boy entering the old man's Lang Hu cup?" His voice was gentle. Obviously he had sympathy for Kim Phi when he saw that he was not greedy for money or beauty. On the contrary, Kim Phi's heart was secretly terrified. The flying techniques of these 2 young ladies have probably been practiced to the ultimate level. Hearing the old man's question, he quickly collected his thoughts and respectfully replied. The junior was chased by enemies, so he had no choice but to rush into the valley to ask the senior for forgiveness. Lang Hukak Master glanced at the 1,000-year-old Lin Chi horse in his hand and said softly, "Oh, you weren't killed by the miasma in the cup. I'm afraid it's thanks to this 1,000-year-old Lin Chi horse. Kim Fai nodded. The old man in the blue shirt pondered for a moment, then carefully observed him again, then asked seriously, "Who is the master?" Kim Fai suddenly remembered the advice and immediately replied, "Master doesn't want Junior to mention his name." The old man in the blue shirt let out an "oh" sound, bowed his head, and thought to himself, "This child really has a predestined relationship with me, plus he has extraordinary talent and excellent bones. If we take him into my sect." Thinking of that, the old man raised his head, his voice still gentle. "Boy, if you agree to be my servant, I will make you the #1 person in the world." Kim Fai's expression changed and he quickly replied respectfully, "Junior doesn't dare." "Why don't you dare?" "Because the Junior hasn't told the master clearly yet. He doesn't dare to arbitrarily worship another person." He thought that those words would make the old man in blue shirt unhappy. Unexpectedly, the old man smiled and nodded in approval. "Great. The boy has such loyalty, the old man respects him very much. Come here, regardless of whether you want to be the old man's subordinate or not, the old man still teaches you martial arts to protect yourself. That way today's meeting won't be a waste." When speaking, the invisible old man exuded an authority that made it difficult for others to obey. Kim Fai was still hesitating when the old man continued, "According to the old man's opinion, first you must use this 10,000-year-old horse Lin Chi. After that, the old man will help him clear the 2 veins of Nam and Dak, so that when wandering around, few people can compete." Hearing that, Kim Fai couldn't help but wonder and thought to himself, "This old man speaks so decisively, but looking at his appearance, who would dare believe that he is an expert in martial arts?" As if he had guessed his thoughts, the old man gently waved his silver beard and laughed. "Do you suspect the old man is incompetent?" Having finished speaking, the old man rolled his eyes. The light of the magic eye suddenly flashed like 2 bright lights, then in an instant it became gentle again. He still smiled and continued asking, "Is what he said right? Do you believe now?" Kim Fai was shocked in his heart. Since entering the world, he has met countless masters, including his mentor, but he has never seen such profound internal skills like this old man. At that moment, he truly woke up and understood that the old man in the blue shirt was a martial arts master who had been in seclusion for a long time. He immediately smiled, clasped his hands in ceremony. "Junior asks for guidance." The old man pondered for a moment and then said, "Only having Lingji for 10,000 years without the antidote is useless." Kim Fai respectfully interjected, "Junior also has a 1,000-year-old ginseng tree." The old man was happy to hear that. "Very good. Give it all to the old man. If you help, please help." Kim Fai immediately offered the 1,000-year-old Lin Chi horse and the 1,000-year-old ginseng tree to the old man. He immediately led him into a single room. Inside placed 2 cushions. He told Kim Fai to sit on one, and at the same time told him to use all his true power to protect his body. The old man put 10,000-year Lingji and 1,000-year ginseng into a jade bowl, then reached out and pressed a small latch on the cliff. Immediately a small cabinet protruded, containing more than 10 exquisite jade vases. He opened 5 small bottles, and the scent of medicinal herbs immediately spread out in the room, showing how precious the medicinal herbs were. He poured 5 types of medicine into a jade bottle, then used his internal strength to mix it. After preparing, he held the vase and stood opposite Kim Fai. In just a moment, the internal force in the old man's hand shot the medicine in the bottle into countless rays as thin as silver silk, straight towards Kim Fai's face, and at the same time shouted softly, "Open your mouth." As soon as Kim Fai opened his mouth, the white smoke flying in front of him suddenly shrunk to the size of a thumb, then entered his mouth. Immediately, the old man quickly pointed at more than 10 important acupuncture points on his body. Kim Fai only felt a hot stream of heat pouring down from his throat to his dantian. A moment later, all the medicine in the jade bottle was incarnated. The old man shouted lightly, threw the jade vase aside, rubbed his hands quickly, then swung his palm to strike Kim Fai straight in the body. Each palm carries a stream of white gas that hits vital points large and small. Finally, he applied both palms to Makman and Bakhoi acupoints. Kim Fai only saw 2 streams of heat continuously transmitted from the old man's palm, running throughout the meridians, spreading the medicinal power throughout his body, something his internal strength could not do on his own. A moment later, both were sweating profusely. Kim Fai only felt that her whole body was burning hot as if she were sitting in a furnace, as if there was a snake crawling endlessly inside her body. The longer you sit, the more intense the pain becomes, especially when the heat rushes into the Nam and Dak veins. It becomes even more unbearable, like being bitten by thousands of ants. But Kim Fai clearly understood that this was the door of life and death. As long as you can't stand it and let the true energy dissipate, not only will your efforts be destroyed, but you will also lose your life on the spot. Therefore, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and purse his lips to endure. 2 hours passed. Suddenly Kim Fai shivered, and Nam Dak's 2 circuits suddenly connected smoothly. The old man in blue immediately slapped him hard on the back. Kim Fai opened his mouth and spit out a mouthful of fresh blood. Immediately after that, the old man used a thread and quickly pointed at the sleeping acupuncture point, causing him to immediately fall asleep. Sure enough, Kim Fai's eyes were heavy, and as soon as he closed them, he fell into a deep sleep. Seeing that, the old man withdrew his palm and sat still, manipulating his energy to restore his true strength. In just that short period of time, Kim Fai's strength had increased 3 times compared to before. The next day, Kim Fai woke up and found herself lying on a brocade-covered bed in a lavishly furnished room, clearly a bedroom. He just gently pressed his hand down, his body shot straight to the ground. If the ceiling was any lower, I'm afraid his head would have hit it. Joy overflowed, he thought to himself. Heaven! My martial arts have reached this level. The day of revenge is not far away. Father in heaven, please bless Kim Fai to quickly clear the blood feud and find her parents. He was still in a trance when the old man in the blue shirt walked in smiling. Kim Fai quickly raised his arms and bowed. Seniors are very kind, juniors are extremely grateful. The old man waved his sleeve. A gentle force immediately helped him stand up straight, preventing him from kneeling and bowing, then asked, Kim Fai, what kind of person is old Hao Tien to me? It turned out that while helping Kim Fai clear the 2 channels of Nam and Dak, he had guessed his background and teachings. Kim Fai was momentarily stunned, knowing he couldn't hide it any longer, so he smiled and replied, Old man Hao Tien is his predecessor's master. The old man in blue shirt suddenly changed his face and shouted loudly, Do you dare lie to this old man? Kim Fai also replied loudly, What Junior said is all the truth, how dare you lie to Senior? The old man's face became even colder and he asked in a low voice, Dia am tu hang qua tien, what kind of person are you? Kim Fai replied in surprise, Junior has never known that person. The old man in blue shirt suddenly got angry and continued shouting, So who is your master? Seeing the old man's sudden change of temper and unpredictable stubbornness, Kim Fai also became angry and replied loudly, Why do I have to tell this Senior? The old man said angrily, This old man helped you become talented, so he can also destroy your martial arts. Are you finally willing to speak? Anger rose, the old man's beard and hair stood up, his expression was so fierce that he shivered. Kim Fai was also angry. If it weren't for the kindness of Lang Hu Valley Master, he would have left a long time ago. Suddenly, the old man's voice lowered. You can refuse to admit it, but this old man forces you to swear that you are not a disciple of Dia Am2, and within 3 years you must kill that guy for me. Kim Fai replied in a low voice, Dia Am2 is not my master, I can swear on this. But if he is a person worth killing, then without any instructions from the Senior, I will take action. If he does not deserve to die, I have no reason to eliminate him. Lang Hu Valley Master coldly humphed. That person's crimes are astronomical, he deserves to be torn apart. Kim Fai calmly said, If I find that he is truly guilty, without the need for my seniors to force me to swear, I will also expel him for the sake of martial arts. Hearing that, the old man in the blue shirt gradually calmed down and suddenly laughed. Great! Great! If you say that he is a corrupt martial artist, then I won't make you swear anymore. As long as later when you wander around the world, you investigate his behavior. If you find it worth killing, then take action to eliminate him for the sake of martial arts. Then this old man will be satisfied. The old man in blue shirt continued, the origin of your teacher, this old man already knows everything. That's good too. This old man will teach you some of the martial arts of this sect. I just hope you will soon be completely enlightened. The next morning, he devoted all his efforts to teaching martial arts to Kim Fai. He quickly realized that Kok Chu's martial arts had the same origin as his sect's martial arts, only they were many times more profound and erudite than his master. For 5 consecutive days, under the dedicated guidance of Kok Master, both Kim Fai's internal and external skills improved dramatically. Regardless of any aspect, he feels that he is changing day by day. But every time he asked about Kok Master's master or sect, the old man just sighed and slowly replied, the clouds in the sky change unpredictably, the sea of hatred that human life cannot fill. The old man has been through so much that he has forgotten all the old stories. In my heart, the old man now only remembers one evil person, Dia Am Tuesday. But where he was hiding in the wilderness and his current whereabouts, the old man did not know. Knowing that the old man must have had a painful past, Kim Fai did not dare to ask further. On the 6th day, the Kok Master called Kim Fai to come before him. His appearance was sad, but his voice was still gentle. Kim Fai, you should leave this place. This time you rejoin the martial arts world, I hope you do great things. Saying that, the old man's eyes were red, the corners of his eyes were filled with tears, clearly revealing his attachment and unwillingness to part. Having been close for a few days, Kim Fai realized that the old man was a gentle and honest person, but unfortunately he was very lonely and gloomy, as if he had experienced an extremely painful event. Therefore, a close relationship gradually arose between the two. Usually I don't feel it clearly, only when I break up do I suddenly realize it. Kim Fai finally couldn't hold back. Tears fell from his eyes. He was so choked up that he couldn't speak. Who knows, when he was young, the blue-shirted old man was once a great killer. Just one word was enough to shock the martial arts world. After an incident that discouraged him, he retreated to this Lang Hu Kok for more than 100 years, trying to forget the past. But every time I mention it, the pain feels like a poisonous snake biting my heart. Over the past 100 years, many martial artists have rushed into Lang Hu Kok, but everyone was greedy, and most of them were killed by the miasma before they could even enter the cave. The old man's heart had been as cold as ice and snow for hundreds of years, but now it seemed to be warmed by a passionate fire. For some reason, as soon as he met Kim Fai, he fell in love. Especially after a few days of being together, he realized more and more that this young man was not only exceptionally talented, but also had a rare intelligence, and the ability to distinguish between good and bad was extremely clear. Therefore, the old man considered Kim Fai as his own flesh and blood. He tried to hold back his tears, but seeing Kim Fai burst into tears, he couldn't help himself, so he let 2 tears slowly flow out. The two looked at each other and cried. A moment later, the old man suddenly burst out laughing, then raised his voice and asked, Kim Fai, the old man spent his entire life lonely and miserable. Are you willing to be my adopted son? Kim Fai quickly wiped away her tears, knelt down, and called out loudly, meaning father. Please accept a bow from Fai Ni. The old man was overjoyed. His trembling hands helped him stand up, and said, Fai Ni, my father-in-law doesn't have anything to do to meet him. Here, my father gave me the Van Nien on Nok tablet. Having finished speaking, he reached into his shirt, took out the pearl and gave it to Kim Fai. In the jade block, 2 green dragons curled around, bearing their fangs and claws, lifelike. Kim Fai took it, and as soon as he touched it, he felt warmth spreading throughout his palm. The old man said again, in this jade stone there are 2 water dragons. Just by observing their appearance, you will know the weather changes. From now on, if you pay attention day and night, you will naturally comprehend a wonderful martial art in the world. Then the old man asked again, "Do you carry the precious sword Kim Huk, the thing that made Old Man Fantasy Tien famous?" Kim Fi nodded. Cockmaster sternly instructed, "And that sword is hidden, a sword technique that very few people in the martial arts world know about. Don't reveal it, otherwise the great demons of yesteryear will surely crave it." Kim Fi respectfully replied, "Fine's name has spread everywhere. I'm afraid it would be difficult to hide it." The old man pondered for a moment, then said firmly, "Fine, please wait for my father." Having finished speaking, he hurried into the room, and a moment later brought out a very delicate, pink-purple fan. As soon as I opened the fan, red light flashed brightly. It turned out that on the tip of each fan blade was attached a small bead the size of a green bean, from which bright red light radiated. The old man handed the fan to Kim Fi and kindly advised, "In the future, you must be very careful when traveling as a wanderer. If you meet someone with great martial arts who wants to cause trouble, just show him this fan and he will not dare to touch you again." Kim Fi bowed his head to thank his father, carefully took the fan and put it in his pocket. The blue-shirted old man personally sent Kim Fi to Kok Kao, and also gave him an elegant white Ao Dai, looking gallant, and a Tien Lai Bak Kai. Before saying goodbye, the old man only gave a few instructions, then quietly wiped away his tears and watched Kim Fi leave. Chapter 12. Great Beauty. As soon as it got dark, a young man in a white Ao Dai riding a white horse galloped from Lang Hu Kok straight towards the central plains. That person is Kim Huk Command Master Dang Kim Fi. Soon the moon rose high, and the moonlight shone down, making people and horses even more beautiful. He rides a horse under the moon, looking like a poetic painting. As he walked, he thought back to his encounters. Less than 3 months after leaving the mountain, his martial arts improved dramatically. During that short time, he also formed a brotherhood and a fatherhood. But from now on, the road ahead is still long, and we don't know when it will end. Suddenly a soft laugh rang out, breaking the silence. Kim Fi immediately restrained himself and tilted his ears to listen. Although the laughter was very light, it carried an air of mockery, clearly coming from a person with profound internal energy, definitely not an ordinary person. Another sweet, pampering tone made him guess that it was the laughter of a beautiful young woman. Sure enough, that soft laughter echoed in the forest, followed by a sweet voice. "Miss, I'm not going anymore, let's go." Immediately followed by a strange laugh in response. Kim Fi saw a young girl coming out of the forest. Her figure is light and slim, her waist is indescribably small, and she is wearing a blue silk shirt. Following behind were 3 other blue-shirted young women who looked like maids. The 4 people leisurely walked out onto the main road, just walking straight, not bothering to look back at him. In the middle of the wild mountains and forests, to suddenly appear such beautiful young girls, they are obviously not ordinary people. Kim Fi looked after and saw that the girl in the lead was as beautiful as a blooming flower, but her expression was cold, her eyes were big and bright, enough to show that she was intelligent and pure. The 3 young girls behind are also beautiful. Just looking at their steps, they know their martial arts skills are no less. For some reason, he felt that the girl was extremely strange. She doesn't tease me, so why bother getting herself into trouble? Thinking so, he relaxed the horse's reins, letting the horse leisurely continue walking. He walked to the left, for young girls quietly walk to the right, moving straight forward. How can a person be as fast as a horse? Kim Fi soon overtook them. Suddenly, the blue-shirted girl glanced at a maid behind her. The maid immediately shouted loudly, "Hey, stop!" Kim Fi reined in, stopped the horse, then slowly turned his head to look. At that moment, he discreetly swallowed the drug given to him by Van Dock the passenger. In just a blink of an eye, his appearance changed, not much but enough to make his appearance completely different from the original, although still handsome. He turned around, with an elegant posture, clasped his hands and asked, "Didn't the lady call her to stop the horse? I wonder what's going on." As soon as he saw the girl in blue, Kim Fi immediately realized that her face was truly stunning. The young girl saw him turn around, hesitated for a moment, then smiled gently and asked, "May I ask what your noble general's great name is?" Kim Fai turned his eyes slightly. A plan came up in his heart, so he smiled and replied, "Below is Duong Long, who likes to travel through mountains and rivers." This time, returning from the foreign mandarin's office, seeing the beautiful moon tonight, he rode his horse to enjoy the moon. "I didn't expect the lady to be so elegant. It's really rare." "May I ask what your noble lady's name is?" The girl in the blue shirt smiled brightly like a flower, her voice soft. "This young lady is the Du from Jiangnan, and also likes to travel. Tonight, I saw a bright moon, so I went out for a walk, but I didn't expect to see Mr. Duong. If something sudden happened just now, I hope you will forgive me." She spoke and glanced at him, her face shy and full of shame. Kim Fai quickly got off his horse. His movements were light, looking like an ordinary person who did not know martial arts. After getting down to the ground, he bowed to Du and said, "Miss Thin is truly an elegant person. If there is any mistake here, I hope you will forgive me." At that moment, he secretly realized that this girl's martial arts skills were definitely not ordinary. Du frowned slightly, doubts arose in her heart, and thought to herself, "This young man with the surname Duong looks like he has a chivalrous demeanor, but his eyes do not show divine light, his temples are not raised high. Could it be that at such a young age he has already reached the realm of inner reticence? Impossible, it's not right." Thinking so, her face only showed a hint of wonder, then smiled and asked Kim Fai, "The gentleman has a weak, scholarly appearance. Walking alone at night like this, aren't you afraid of meeting a gangster?" Kim Fai secretly smiled and thought, a slender young woman, even leading 3 beautiful young women without fear, to take care of others. Thinking about it, he still smiled leisurely and replied, "Miss Shen is so beautiful, and she's a girl. Isn't walking in the middle of a deserted mountain late at night even more worrying than this one?" Du chuckled. "This young lady has a way to deal with strong enemies. You don't need to worry about this." Kim Fai smiled and continued, "Although I do not have the ability to fight the enemy, I have the words to repel the enemy." Du covered his mouth and smiled, asking, "Did you follow the main road to enter the gate?" Kim Fai pondered for a moment and then replied, "I followed the ancient path, passed through Thua Duk, followed the road down to the Yellow River, then from the gate of Haifeng Citadel entered the internal Mandarin." Du continued, "Don't you need an escort? This young lady would like to make a small contribution." "Thank you, miss, it's more convenient for me to travel alone." Having finished speaking, he gently jumped onto the horse. Du raised his voice again, "If you come to Jiangnan in the future, please stop by the foot of Tien Muk Mountain so that this young lady can receive you." Kim Fai urged his horse to continue, answering as he walked, "When I come to Hangzhou, I will definitely stop by Tien Muk to visit Miss." As soon as the words fell, the horse jumped more than 10 feet away. From behind, Du's voice still echoed, "Young master, don't forget that." He did not answer, just quietly urged his horse to rush away. Not long after walking, suddenly a figure rushed down from the mountainside on the side of the road. Before he could even touch the ground, he threw a palm straight at him. The palm's force was immeasurably strong. Kim Fai was startled and frightened. He quickly pushed his legs and the horse immediately jumped more than 10 feet away, avoiding the wind. He turned his horse around and saw a taciturn-looking man standing in front of him. He smiled faintly and asked, "What do you guys want to do?" When Tun Sat saw him turn his head, he realized that he was not the right person he was looking for. He was briefly stunned, then laughed, his voice full of cunning. "Kid, even if you turn into ashes, this old man will still recognize you." Kim Fai was a little startled and thought to himself, could it be that he intentionally spoke provocatively to reveal his identity? Thinking so, his face darkened and he coldly asked, "Since I and you have never known each other, why do we have such bad intentions as soon as we meet?" Tun Sat was famous for his cunning in the rivers and lakes, not only with cruel tricks but also with expertise in strange magic. At this moment, his heart was full of doubts, not understanding how the young man in front of him had used the method of his ghost hand Taba Soul. However, no matter how delicate the strange appearance, those eyes still cannot hide their familiar majesty. Tun Sat still firmly believes that the person in front of him is Dang Kim Phi. Hearing him ask, he spoke in a strange voice. "Kid, this old man is not a 3-year-old child. How can your strange magic trick me?" Kim Phi's face darkened. He reached into his pocket, took out a single spirit pill, put it in his mouth, then suddenly looked up at the sky and laughed loudly like a crazy person. Tun Sat heard Kim Phi's laughter and was both confused and afraid. As soon as the laughter ended, he saw his face as cold as ice, his eyes shooting out 2 brilliant beams of light. Realizing that it was Kim Phi, Tun Sat shivered in horror. Just looking at that look, he understood that his martial arts had improved greatly in the past few days, and he thought to himself, could it be that this kid has been drinking Lingji for 10,000 years? Kim Phi saw him standing there stunned, coldly speaking. "The day of your death has come." Tun Sat was startled, quickly took 2 steps back, gritted his teeth and replied, "Kid, if I don't beat you to death today, I swear I won't be a human." Kim Phi smiled faintly, murderous intent clearly visible on his face. Tun Sat also grinned, both palms struck at the same time, continuously throwing 15 palm positions. Kim Phi jumped up, his left palm rotated, his right palm pushed hard, the storm rushed back 5 times in a row. The 2 swords collided, and the loud explosion echoed endlessly. Tun Sat roared and rushed forward to attack again. Kim Phi looked up and laughed loudly, suddenly performing the move Hong Nan Bak Kat, the first move in Bak Kat Broken Men 3 Assassins. The wind wave rolled down like a mountain, pressing straight towards the enemy. The power was so strong that all the trees within 7 feet had their branches broken and their leaves shed. Immediately afterwards, there was a terrifying explosion, accompanied by a terrible howl. A figure was thrown into the air, blood splashing. Tun Sat's skull was broken by the force of his palm, his body was thrown 5 or 6 meters out. Seeing only a flash of white light, Kim Phi had already jumped back onto the horse. He smiled faintly and muttered, "With 1 strike to take your life, it seems like you're still lucky." Having finished speaking, he was about to spur his horse and leave when suddenly a holy voice came from the mountainside. "Stop!" A small red shadow, as bright as fire, as fast as a falling star, instantly stood in front of him. The young girl in red was incredibly beautiful. As soon as she landed, she asked sharply, "Hey, do you know who the person you just killed was?" Kim Phi coldly replied, "Ghost Han Tai Tien Tun Sat, but who else?" The young girl asked again, "Who are you?" "This is Dang Kim Phi." The young girl in red was startled and frightened. She quickly took a step back and looked at him intently for a long time, her expression half confident and half suspicious, as if she wanted to ask again, but as if muttering to herself, "You are not." Kim Phi interrupted and said coldly, "I have urgent business to attend to. Please forgive me for not being able to attend to you." "Stop." Kim Phi coldly looked at her. Her eyes were rolled back, not angry but majestic, her whole body was covered in red, looking like a person of fire. The young girl in red saw him looking at her like that, seemed angry, and shouted, "What's so funny about why you're staring at me like that?" Kim Phi turned his face away and asked in a cold voice, "The lady called me to stop, what exactly do you want to ask?" The girl in red smiled faintly and replied, "If you owe money, you have to pay. If you kill someone, you have to pay for your life. Do you understand?" Kim Phi slowly got off his horse and said gently, "The lady said that. Does she want to take revenge on that guy's behalf?" The red-shirted girl just coldly humphed and didn't respond. Kim Phi still leisurely asked, "May I ask what your noble lady's name is?" The girl coldly replied, "Thuong Quan Lo Chao." Kim Phi clapped his hands and laughed loudly, "Miss Thuong Quan, your name is beautiful and suits you. It's truly as beautiful as a drop of morning dew under the morning sun. What young girl doesn't like to be complimented, let alone the person praising her is a handsome young man?" So after hearing that, she couldn't help but smile. The relationship between a man and a woman is inherently strange. As long as they agree, they will arise in an instant. Lo Chao had fallen in love with that strange boy without her even knowing it. Seeing that Lo Chao's appearance was still arrogant but the corners of his lips were slightly curled, Kim Fai immediately bowed. Miss Thuong Quan, please take your leave. Lo Chao absent-mindedly asked, is the young master really Dang Kim Fai? Kim Fai smiled and replied, it's because of you. Lo Chao's face suddenly changed. She raised her hands, 2 shining long swords appeared in her hands, then shouted, Kim Fai, quickly withdraw your weapons. Kim Fai still smiled. Is there any deep hatred between the lady and this servant? Right now you only have 2 paths to choose from. Please explain clearly, ma'am. 1 is to follow me back to Thuong Quan, 2 is to win my sword and then go wherever you want. In her heart, she only hoped Kim Fai would choose the first path. But after a moment of thinking, Kim Fai replied, what if I don't want to go to Thuong Quan Castle and don't want to fight with the young lady? Lo Chao was stunned for a moment, then coldly said, then don't you dare leave this place alive. Kim Fai raised his face to the sky and laughed loudly. There's no need to worry, lady. Please return to the mountain to inform the Thuong Quan family that within half a year, Ding will personally come to Thuong Quan Palace to end the blood debt 20 years ago on Ma Tien land. Hearing that, Lo Chao was startled and quickly took 2 steps back, his face constantly changing. As soon as the words ended, Kim Fai threw himself on the horse's back, gave a kick, and the horse sped away as fast as flying. Lo Chao stood looking, her eyes suddenly filled with tears, her mouth muttering, why do we suddenly care so much about him? When he disappeared, she suddenly felt empty inside, like something was missing. While in a daze, she suddenly heard a few shrill calls from the mountainside. Miss, miss. For small figures, dressed as red as fire, rushed down from the mountainside. As soon as she touched the ground, the girl in the lead spoke up. It turns out the lady is here. We've been looking for half a day but can't find her. The second young girl was frightened, suddenly and asked, Miss, is someone bullying you? Lo Chao sadly raised his head and shouted softly, who told you to ask such nonsense? The 4 maids were stunned and thought to themselves, Miss has always been gentle, why is she suddenly so impatient tonight? The first maid muttered, her voice filled with indignation, huh? Whoever dares to bully my young lady, if I find out, I will definitely tear him to pieces. Hearing this, Lo Chao stomped his foot on the ground and angrily shouted, Xian Hong, talk less. What does my business have to do with you? The 4 maids looked at each other, stuck out their tongues and shook their heads, not daring to say another word. Suddenly Thursday Hong cried out in horror, pointing at the body lying on the side of the road. Look, is that person the protector of Thiat Hong gang? The 3 remaining maids quickly ran over to take a look, and after a while, they returned to Lo Chao and spoke softly and consoled. Miss, did Tun Sat bully you? Lo Chao remained silent and did not respond. Xian Hong said softly, don't worry, lady. Even though he accidentally killed Tun Protector Fap in front of Master Bao, there were us who testified, saying that Tun Protector Fap insulted the young lady, causing the lady to take action in anger. Lo Chao sadly raised his head, looked into the distance, and said softly, let's go. 5 beautiful young girls, with light and agile movements, quietly left along the official road, gradually disappearing from sight. Chapter 13. 14. Fall into the trap. The harsh sun shines down on Haiphong Mouth. People are still busy. Most of them are traders from domestic and foreign mandarins who go back and forth to make a living. Amidst the crowd of people, the sound of horse hoofs suddenly sounded from afar. A young man wearing a white robe and riding a snow-white horse leisurely approached the gate. He is the Master Kim Huck, the person who was recently rumored to have died in Lang Hu Kok. His appearance is white, his cheeks are slightly pink, his eyes are normal like a mortal's, his temples are not raised. At first glance, everyone just thought he was a scholarly gentleman from a rich family traveling the world. The official road was covered with dust and sand, yet his clothes did not have a speck of dust on them. In the intense heat, he didn't even see a drop of sweat. The sweaty passers-by who saw it couldn't help but admire it. Since leaving Lang Hu Kok, Kim Fai's martial arts have improved significantly. Namdok's 2 veins have opened, but the medicinal power in the Dantian has not yet completely dissipated. He had never experienced a serious battle recently, because opponents often lost their lives before even being able to overcome one move. Because he had not used all his strength could not increase further. This time, Kim Fai entered the inner Mandarin from Haifeng Gate, intending to go south to Chao Lutsong Mountain. First return the sex amulet to the Bokdok Mon Sex Grand Master, and then go to Thiat Hongbang's headquarters to settle the old feud with Tai No in pursuit of the soul of the king of Hell Dat Ta Fong. Unexpectedly, when he was about to pass Haifeng Pass, someone's voice suddenly echoed in the crowd. It's this little guy. Kim Fai still didn't pay attention, just leisurely spurring his horse forward. Not long after entering Haifeng Cao, it was sunset, and in front was Ka Triad Ha. Ka Triad Ha is not a big town, but because merchants from domestic and foreign mandarins often gather, it is always bustling and bustling. His horse was handsome and his body elegant, causing many passers-by to stop and look. Not long after walking, Kim Fai smelled the fragrant and extremely seductive scent of beef. His stomach was hungry, so he urged his horse to go a few steps faster, stopping in front of a beautifully decorated restaurant. The waiter in the inn saw the guest and immediately happily ran out to greet him and bowed down to invite. Dear guests, please come into the palace. This shop cooks the most delicious dishes in this town. Kim Fai gently jumped off the horse. Fokai quickly took the reins and bowed his head in greeting. Please come in. Having said this, he leaned closer and lowered his voice to say, Later, young master, it's best not to reveal your money or treasure. There are a few rich guests in the shop. Seeing Pukai's kind reminder, Kim Fai immediately felt good and conveniently stuffed some scrap silver as a reward for him. The monk was overjoyed and kept saying thank you. After leading Kim Fai inside, Fukai quickly turned back out. His smile revealed a cunning look, glanced at the 2 scoundrels to sit huddled in the corner of the wall and then nodded slightly. The other 2 immediately stood up, walked over and whispered, Be careful, it's best to take your time, don't reveal anything. Fokai replied softly, You 2 can rest assured, tonight the 3rd watch will be divided into 2 ways. At that moment, a group of people walked out of the store, and the 2 scoundrels immediately turned and left. Inside the restaurant, Kim Fai chose a seat next to the window and told his wife to make some dishes to eat and drink. The officer from before smiled again, stepped forward and asked softly, Would you like some more wine, sir? Kim Fai smiled and replied, It's okay, get me some cold wine. Fokai quickly went inside, then brought out the kettle of cold wine, poured it, smiled and said, Dear sir, the room in this hotel is very clean and elegant. Within hundreds of miles around here, there is no place that has a room as clean and cool as this inn. If you need it, I will sweep out the coolest room for you to rest in. Seeing that Fokai was so enthusiastic, Kim Fai casually replied, It's okay. Fokai quickly left. Kim Fai sat alone, leisurely eating, his eyes scanning the surrounding diners. Suddenly he noticed an old monk with silver hair and a cruel appearance sitting at the table eating. Suddenly, he stopped his chopsticks, turned to look at Kim Fai, and shouted, Little guy! Are you Kim Hut Command Master? Seeing that fierce appearance, Kim Fai only smiled faintly and turned away, secretly on guard. The old monk chuckled, Kid, stop pretending to be deaf and dumb. Huh! A cold snort rang out from the skinny middle-aged man sitting at the table next to Kim Fai. The old Taoist chuckled again and continued, Kid, tonight at the 3rd watch, if you have the courage, come to Chao Citadel outside the West Gate to meet me. Kim Fai laughed and coldly asked, Who are you? The old monk replied, Who the Taoist is, you will understand at that time. Having finished speaking, he slowly stood up and walked out. As he passed by the middle-aged writer sitting next to Kim Fai's table, he chuckled, lowered his voice and said, It's best for outsiders not to interfere in the affairs of the 9 Heavenly Dao Palace. The blue-shirted writer just smiled faintly and did not answer. The old Taoist walked out the door and quickly disappeared. Although the conversation was very quiet, the officer standing nearby heard it clearly. He quickly ran out the door, and just as the two scoundrels returned, he whispered in his ear, "Just now, someone from the 9 Heavenly Dao Palace made an appointment with him tonight, at the 3rd watch, to meet him outside the west gate of the city." A scoundrel quietly asked, "Have you quit smoking? When will the medicine take effect?" The waiter nodded and replied, "Quit it. By the 3rd watch, he was unconscious. You should quickly ask again how to handle it." The two scoundrels immediately walked away. Fokai turned back into the shop, saw Kim Fai standing up and smiled and said, "Please return to your room to rest." Kim Fai looked cheerful and followed him into the room. Waiting for his wife to go out, he immediately bolted the door and sat on the bed to practice. Before long, a white smoke rose from the top of his head. His nose blew out 2 streams of milk-white air, as big as the mouth of a cup, coming in and out regularly. "It's getting dark." Kim Fai finished performing the attack, rested for a moment, then the drum struck the 1st watch. He checked his belongings once, then threw himself out the window and left. The name Qtn Dao Palace sounds strange. Kim Fai has never heard of it. But just by looking at the eyes of the old monk from before, he knew that the other person was definitely not ordinary. Even though he had no enmity with the 9 Heavenly Dao Palace, Kim Fai was challenged and could not cowardly avoid it. He left the city gate and headed straight west. From afar, I saw Van Kai Truong Tan appear under the dim moonlight. The silhouette of the ancient citadel was cold and mysterious. Kim Fai immediately used a light attack, his body like a gust of wind rushing straight towards that direction. Before the 3rd watch, he arrived sincerely. Raising his head and looking around, he saw that the ancient citadel was deserted and deserted. Apart from the sound of crickets and worms chirping, there was no sign of anyone or anything. He jumped up to the citadel, looked out, and saw in front of him just a desolate forest, still without a single person. Just as he jumped to the ground and was about to head straight into the forest, Kim Fai suddenly felt dizzy, his legs felt weak, he couldn't stand steady, so he sat down. He was startled and frightened. Apparently, when he was lucky, he didn't notice anything strange, but now it was as if he had been poisoned. At that moment, 3 blue shadows suddenly appeared from the forest. It turned out to be Black Sat Tam Ma. They slowly approached. Phi Tien Demon Ma chuckled, "Little guy, you finally fell into the old man's hands." Before he could finish speaking, an old Taoist monk with white hair and a fierce appearance appeared below. As soon as he showed his face, he flew in front of Tam Ma and smiled faintly. "I didn't expect the 3 of them to be so reckless. Dare to meddle in my family's affairs." Chow Hai Kwang Ma, the most hot-tempered person among Tam Ma, heard this and let out a strange laugh and shouted, "That old Taoist, where did you come from? Today, I'm afraid your fate is over." Having finished speaking, he silently sent out a stream of cold air. The old Taoist chuckled, took 5 steps back, and said coldly, "The Taoists don't bother to fight with you 3. If you know what to do, leave this place quickly." The arrogant voice was like a superior reprimanding a subordinate. Chow Hai Kwang Ma laughed horribly, raised his long thin arms, and hit the old Taoist straight in the face. As soon as the old Taoist saw that, his eyes flashed cold light. His legs turned around, his body rushed forward, his hand was as fast as the wind, grabbing Chow Hai Kwang Ma's elbow. The technique is both quick and precise, hard to imagine. Chow Hai Kwang Ma is also not ordinary. Even though the incident happened unexpectedly, he still let out a strange laugh and his cold eyes flashed. Seeing the Taoist reaching out to grab him, he not only did not dodge, but also straightened his arm, his 10 fingers aimed straight at the old Taoist's table and stabbed at him. The old Taoist smiled faintly, turned around, both palms struck diagonally, the palm force immediately enveloped Chow Hai Kwang Demon. He was frightened, his body trembled, white smoke rose around him, his hands moved, his palm wind rolled back like a storm. Both sides were top experts, and the fierce battle was indescribable. Meanwhile, Kim Fai sat cross-legged, his arms and legs were weak, his mind in a daze. He quickly reached into his pocket and took out an antidote and swallowed it, channeling his energy to try to push the poison out. Seeing that Chow Hai Kwang demon was strong enough to hold off the old monk, Flying Tien demon and Entering Earth monster demon quietly moved towards King Fai. But before we could get there, out of the darkness, someone suddenly stepped out. It was the middle-aged rider in a blue shirt, with a thin body and eyes as cold as a hawk's, shouting loudly, "Stand still!" The other two were startled. When realizing the origin of the person who had just appeared, Phi Tien Demon Ma quickly clasped his hands and said, "It turned out to be the Great White Knight. Did he also come to this foreign official?" It turned out that the writer was Baghdad Fong, nicknamed Han Fong King, the first master of the Hoa Sun sect. In recent years, his illustrious reputation throughout the world has been spread discreetly, and few people know his real whereabouts. Baghdad Fong coldly replied, "Maybe I don't have the right to come here." Phi Tien Demon chuckled and continued, "Today, the bad page is handling family matters. I hope the White Knight will respect the Black Sat page." Baghdad Fong quickly continued, "I don't want to get involved in other matters." Flying Tien Demon and Entering Earth Demon were delighted to hear that and quickly clasped their hands and said, "Baghdad heaps kindness, we brothers will definitely repay it in the future." Dat Fong smiled faintly and coldly asked, "Do you dare to cause trouble with the 9 Heavenly Dao Palace?" Phi Tien Demon was startled and asked in surprise, "Could it be that the White Knight?" He thought Dat Fong was a member of QTN Dao Palace. Dat Fong calmly replied, "I am not a member of the 9 Heavenly Dao Palace, but I know that their experts are extremely numerous. That old Taoist is only third-rate among them." Phi Tien Demon Ma pondered for a moment, then raised his head, his voice cold. "So now I just hope that the White Knight will give way and stand aside." At that moment, he suddenly saw King Phi's face glowing red, sweat pouring out like rain, clearly a sign that the poisonous gas was about to be forced out. Phi Tien Demon was frightened, quickly took a step forward, raised 2 fingers and aimed straight at the Chiman acupuncture point on King Phi's chest. But how could Baghdad Fong let him harm King Phi? He immediately used his palm, hitting the vital point on the opponent's shoulder. Flying Tien Demon was startled, quickly glanced at the Earth Demon, withdrew his palm, smiled faintly and asked, "What does the White Knight mean by doing that?" Seeing that he had retreated, Dat Fong stopped and coldly replied, "Nothing." Phi Tien Demon Ma angrily asked, "Didn't the White Knight say he wouldn't interfere in other people's affairs?" "Right. So why did Baghdad Hu intervene in my subordinates' affairs like that? Do I interfere in your affairs?" Phi Tien Demon heard this so angry that his face changed and he shouted loudly, "So Baghdad Heap is determined to intervene in the affairs of his brother? I don't care about other things, but when people are in danger and sneak attack, I definitely have to take care of it." Having finished speaking, Baghdad Fong stood up straight, looking leisurely, completely ignoring Phi Tien Demon. Phi Tien Demon was angry, without saying another word, raised 2 fingers of his right hand, as fast as lightning, consecutively pointing at 3 important points in front of Dat Fong's chest. Dat Fong smiled faintly, turned around, raised his palm to counterattack, using all his internal strength. His palms continued without end. The two fought. The palm wind hissed whoosh, so fast that it was difficult to distinguish who was the demon and who was the white hero. When Entering the Earth monster saw that the Flying Tien Demon had attacked Dat Fong, he immediately took the opportunity to rush forward and strike straight at King Phi's vital point. King Phi had just used his strength to suppress the poison when he was suddenly hit in the shoulder. His blood was turned upside down. He spit out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. The demon laughed shrilly, continued to wave his palm, aiming straight at Tam Chiu Kin Tien's acupuncture point, clearly wanting to take his life. At that moment, a clear voice suddenly rang out, "Stop it!" The monster was making a move. When he heard the shout, he quickly deflected it and at the same time retreated quickly. A bang sounded, sand and dust flew, the ground next to King Phi sunk into a deep hole. The Wind Master knocked King Phi's body 5 feet away, and his mouth spat out another mouthful of blood. Suddenly, a small figure wearing a light blue shirt rushed forward like a meteor. When we got closer, we could clearly see that it was the Dudu. At this time, Flying Tien Demon and Chow Hai Kwang Demon were in a fierce battle with Bok Dat Fong and the old Taoist monk, fighting extremely fiercely, and for a while there was no way to escape the battle. As for entering the earth monster, as soon as he saw Du, he immediately bowed respectfully. She didn't bother paying attention to him, just frowned slightly, walked closer to King Fai, observed him for a moment, then reached into her pocket and took out 2 small jade bottles. She poured a pill from a bottle into the palm of her hand, put it straight into his mouth, at the same time helped him sit up, placed a hand on the Makman acupoint, transmitting heat. A moment later, King Fai opened his eyes and Du immediately withdrew his palm. In the distance, the old Taoist fighting with Kwang Ma was gradually losing ground, while Bok Dat Fong and Phi Tien Demon were evenly matched. The battle was still undecided. King Fai sat on the ground, her luck adjusted several times, her heart could not help but be surprised. Normally, his true energy was extremely abundant, but right now it was weak and could not function properly, especially in Nam's head and Du's second veins, as if something was blocking them. Opening his eyes and clearly seeing the person in front of him, he quietly stood up. Du looked at him, smiling, a proud smile like a hunter who had just caught a fierce beast. Looking closely, she saw that he looked exactly like Duong Long the other day. Understanding the situation, knowing that he escaped death thanks to Du's help, King Fai smiled and bowed. Dian did not dare to say it. "May I ask your benefactor to honor your name?" Du covered his mouth with his sleeve and smiled softly, asking again, "Does the young master not know who this young lady is?" Even though he recognized her, King Fai still pretended to be bewildered. "Please forgive me, I'm so stupid, I really don't recognize you." Du heard that and thought to himself, "Do you think I don't know who you are? Whether it's Dang King Fai or Duong Long, it's difficult for you to escape my hands." Thinking so, she still smiled and pretended to be shy, saying, "This young lady is then Du. May I ask, young master, is Kim Hut Command Master, young Master Dang, the person who recently became famous in the world?" King Fai nodded. "Dang King Fai is my subordinate. Your great kindness, no matter what, I will repay you." Having finished speaking, he glanced at the 2 battles, then asked, "Why is Black Sat Tam Ma so disrespectful?" Entering the earth monster demon was angry. Hearing this became even angrier and shouted loudly, "You!" Du gently waved his hand to signal silence, then softly asked King Fai, "In your opinion, what is considered polite?" King Fai was stunned and thought to himself, "That's right, what should they be called polite?" Thinking so, he still replied, "With such an arrogant attitude, sooner or later they will bring disaster upon themselves." Entering the earthly monster, hearing that, couldn't help but shouted angrily, "Arrogant brat." Du turned to King Fai again, his voice still gentle. "Is Ding lacking in agreement to follow this young lady back to the site, or is there something else?" King Fai replied, "I still have my own work to do." At that moment, a popping sound suddenly rang out in the arena. The old Taoist took advantage of the chaos and rushed into the darkness, disappearing without a trace. Chow Hai Kwang Ma immediately retreated to stand behind Du, while Bok Dat Fong also flew to King Fai's side. Phi Tien Demon chased after him and said to Dat Fong, "Sir, don't continue to cause trouble for me anymore." Du clasped his hands and bowed to Bok Dat Fong and asked, "Is the White Knight still strong?" Dat Fong coldly replied. She went home and told her father that Bok Dat Fong did not like his way of doing things. Du did not get angry, just smiled softly. This young lady will definitely tell her father. Having finished speaking, she turned to Tam Ma and said decisively, "Stop it." Before leaving, Du turned to look at King Fai, smiled flirtatiously and said, "At the end of this year, young Master Deng will definitely have to pay a visit to this site. This young lady still has a dose of medicine that she wants to sell to the young knight." Having finished speaking, she led Hak Sat Tam Ma and left. As soon as Du disappeared, Bok Dat Fong immediately clasped his hands and bowed to King Fai and asked, "Is young knight a subordinate of Fien Ma?" Young Master Fien conveyed the message. Bok Dat Fong would like to send his regards to the commanding officer. Kim Fai shook his head and responded, I am not a disciple of Fien Ma. Indeed, he did not know who Fien Ma was. Although he had heard that in the martial arts world, there was a great demon with a fierce reputation, killing people in the blink of an eye and spreading havoc across the world, but that person's identity was completely unknown to him. Dat Fong was surprised and continued asking, So are you guys the disciples of Dia Am too? Then he muttered, It's also impossible. I've never heard of the birth of Dia Am too, and Van Sun and I has never accepted a male disciple. Kim Fai suddenly remembered that when he left Lang Hukak, his father-in-law gave him a fan, saying it was a token from when he was wandering around in the past. Thinking so, he blurted out and asked, Is the great hero talking about this servant's father? Dat Fong heard that casual question and became even more bewildered. Kim Fai quickly reached into his pocket, took out a small fan, smiled and said, This fan is a token of gratitude that my father used in the past when practicing his wandering ways. As soon as he saw the fan, Dat Fong immediately knelt down and worshipped. Seeing a fan is like seeing a person. Juniors would like to say hello. After bowing, he stood up and said to Kim Fai, Does young Master Deng know where Senior Fien is now? I have always wanted to personally come to the audience to thank the person who saved my whole family from death, but since then, Senior Fien has no longer appeared on the streets. Kim Fai pondered for a moment, silently thinking, It's better not to say this clearly. Thinking so, he replied, Currently, my father-in-law is in retreat overseas. That's all I know, but I don't really know where you are. Dat Fong smiled and continued, This time the young knight appearing in martial arts caused quite a stir. Thiat Hong Gang has spread the news throughout the world. I would like to invite you, young knight, to come to the Thiat Hong Bang headquarters on Mak Fu Mountain on Mid-Autumn night. At that time, I'm afraid all the heroes of the world will gather on the top of the mountain. Kim Fai said and asked, Don't you know how the martial arts of Tai No chasing the soul of King Thiet Ta Fong are? Dat Fong frowned and replied, This matter. I don't know much about this. I just heard that Ta Fong's martial arts in the world can be called the best. Kim Fai smiled lightly. If so, at that time I will definitely go to the agreement. Dat Fong said kindly, At that time, if there is anything you need to tell me, young knight, please give me orders. Don't dare bother Bogdai Heap. Please don't say that, young master. At that time I will definitely use all my strength. Before he finished speaking, a violent shout suddenly rang out in the forest. Immediately afterwards, a figure accompanied by a stream of cold light rushed straight towards Kim Fai. Chapter 15. Black Shirt Teenager. Kim Fai stood still in the wind for a moment, then suddenly vomited a mouthful of blood. His eyes widened, his head was dizzy and he fell to the ground, unconscious immediately. The sun gradually rose. On the deserted field, the sound of horse hooves suddenly echoed. A young man in a black shirt appeared on a horse, carrying a long sword on his back. His appearance was as handsome as jade, his sword eyebrows were tilted backwards, his nose was high and straight, and his lips were thin. He was riding a black horse, holding the reins in both hands, holding a book in his right hand, humming softly as he walked. Suddenly, he saw a handsome young man lying motionless on the ground. He quickly jumped off his horse and walked quickly to Kim Fai's side. Seeing that there was still blood on the corner of his mouth, he immediately held Kim Fai's hand to feel his pulse, then frowned, his eyes turned to the dark corner, and thought to himself, What injury is so strange? Kim Fai's pulse is sometimes fast and sometimes slow, extremely unusual. The black-shirt teenager stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and walked back and forth, thinking endlessly. For people who are well versed in medicine, encountering an incurable disease is like stumbling upon a dangerous move. If you can't solve it, you will absolutely not be willing. He bowed his head and looked at Kim Fai for a long time, muttering as he walked around. Suddenly, he picked up Kim Fai and rushed straight into the forest. The black horse also slowly followed. Entering the forest, the black-shirt teenager quickly pointed at 3 major acupuncture points on Kim Fai's body, then helped him sit up. One hand placed on the Makman acupuncture point, the other hand reached into his pocket and took out a blue pill, stuffed it into Kim Fai's mouth, and then transferred the true energy. Before long, Kim Fai felt a stream of heat rush into his body. The black-clothed teenager was sweating like rain, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. An hour later, Kim Fai slowly opened his eyes. The heat flow still operates in the body, but cannot penetrate the intersection of the two circuits Nam and Dak. He tried his true energy 3 times and found that all the discomfort had disappeared. Only the place where Nam Dak's 2 veins met was still stuck and could not be cleared. Finally, the black-clothed teenager withdrew his palm, stood up straight, and sighed softly. Kim Fai also stood up, clasped his hands in greeting and said, "This kindness is not enough to say a few words of thanks. May I ask the benefactor's great name?" At that moment, Kim Fai's face was less pale. The 2 people stood facing each other, both handsome in appearance, difficult to distinguish between height and lowness. The black-shirted teenager smiled softly and replied, "At Lower Dong Phuong Min." "May I ask what your noble name is?" Kim Fai smiled. "This is Dang Kim Fai." Dong Phuong Min softly said, "Oh," showing his admiration. "Is Brother Dang the same person who once single-handedly caused chaos in Van Jia Trang, and was known by the gangsters as Kim Huk Lin Chu, that great hero Dang?" Kim Fai quickly replied, "My younger brother only has a bit of a false name, but his talent cannot compare to Dong Phuong brother." Dong Phuong Min was delighted to hear that. His face turned slightly red. He smiled and said, "This is the first time my little brother stepped foot into the world. He's still very young and everything. How dare he compare to Brother Dang? In the future, I hope you will teach me more." Kim Fai immediately replied, "Brother Dong Phuong, don't be too humble. In the future, if you need my help with anything, just say the word and I will definitely give it my all." Dong Phuong Min suddenly asked in a serious voice, "Brother Dang, do you still feel uncomfortable?" Hearing that, Kim Fai was deeply grateful and immediately replied, "Recently, I have noticed that there seems to be an obstacle at the intersection of the Nam and Dak veins. Moreover, his true power cannot be used, his strength is decreasing day by day, and he is afraid he has been poisoned by some kind of poison." Dong Phuong Min was startled when he heard this and quickly asked, "How long has Brother Dang had that feeling?" "Started yesterday." Dong Phuong Min pondered for a moment, then sadly said, "Perhaps Brother Dang was murdered by someone else. Otherwise, how could that place be so obstructed?" Having said that, he paused for a moment and then continued, "But Brother Dang, don't worry too much. My younger brother's teacher is very knowledgeable in medical science and can definitely cure you." Kim Fai was happy to hear that and quickly asked, "Who is the commandant?" "The tutor is Bich Phong Tan Nan." Hearing the name Bich Phong Tan Nan, Kim Fai was extremely surprised and thought, "Is it possible that Tien Nguai Tam Tun, a famous martial arts town 50 years ago, is still alive? But people say that he had a great battle with Sai No Tu Si, and both died on the top of Dai Tuet Mountain." Thinking so, he asked seriously, "Could it be that Tien Nguai Tam Tun still hasn't returned to immortality?" Dong Phuong Min gently shook his head. "This matter cannot be told to outsiders, only Brother Dang alone. Not only have the 3 tutor brothers now lost their lives, but it is said that Sai No Tu Si is about to return to the world. This time my little brother stepped into the world also had something to do with that." After hearing this, Kim Fai was startled and frightened, silently saying, "It's only natural that people won't say anything when they first meet, not to mention that I've already received so many favors. Why would it be convenient to ask more?" Thinking for a moment, he said, "Please rest assured, Brother Dong Phuong, I absolutely will not reveal a word." Dong Phuong Min replied with a serious face, "It's not that I don't believe Brother Dang, but because my tutor has warned me, this matter is related to the life and death of the entire martial arts world. This time, my little brother obeyed orders and went to work. He was strictly forbidden to cause trouble with anyone and was absolutely not allowed to reveal any information. If the Sai Confucian 2C group knew about it, the consequences would be unimaginable." Kim Fai was frightened and quickly said, "Please don't say that, Brother Dong Fong. My younger brother's father-in-law has not passed away yet." Dong Fong Min said in a deep voice, "If Sino 2C reappears in the world, Fian Ma will definitely respond." Kim Fai decisively replied, "Little brother dares to guarantee his life. His father will absolutely not return to the world to support Psi Confucian 2C. What if he reappears? If the Jiania father reappears, he will definitely take the opposing side of Sino 2C. Dong Fong Min frowned. How can Brother Ding ensure that? Kim Fai said solemnly, "If Dong Fong brother believes in you, please don't worry about this point. If you need anything as a pledge, just tell me and I will immediately guarantee it." Seeing him so sincere, Dong Fong Min no longer had any doubts, so he clasped his hands and said, "If so, please Dang brother accept a gift from me." Kim Fai quickly replied, "Little brother, don't dare. Just now, little brother was rude. I hope Brother Dang will forgive me." Kim Fai smiled. "It's natural for you to be so careful. When traveling around the world, you have to be wary of crooks and everything." Dong Fong Min immediately took out a white jade flute from his pocket, gave it to Kim Fai and said, "The tutor retreated at Bok Dao Fong, Yin Sun Mountain. Brother Dang, take this jade flute and come find it. The tutor will definitely cure you." Kim Fai received the jade flute and gratefully said, "Brother Dong Fong's kindness, I will never forget for the rest of my life." Dong Fong Min humbly smiled softly and continued thoughtfully, "I have to go back to the city to get the horse." He walked out of the forest, laughing and saying, "Come on, let's ride this same horse first." Having finished speaking, he waved his hand and the horse immediately ran forward. The two of them jumped on the saddle, the horses kicked their hooves and rushed straight towards the citadel. At that time, the sky was already bright. The two handsome men, riding the same horse, looked extremely eye-catching. The horse galloped to the door of the inn where Kim Fai was staying. Dong Fong Min just gently pulled the reins and the horse immediately stopped. When the clerk saw Kim Fai return, his face changed. He quickly glanced at the counterman, then forced a smile and walked up to say, "Oh, you're coming back from a walk around town? Why didn't the villain see the young master come out?" Kim Fai just coldly humphed without bothering to answer and walked straight inside. When the captain saw him entering the house, he panicked and quickly ran after him to stop him, saying, "Please sit down and drink a cup of wine to warm yourself." Seeing him looking unusually confused, Kim Fai became suspicious and asked, "What trick are you going to play?" Having finished speaking, he pushed the soldier 7 or 8 steps away, then walked to the door and pushed hard. Inside was empty, the clothes and the money he exchanged for pearls were all gone. Fortunately, he still kept the most valuable things in his treasure bag, otherwise the consequences would have been unpredictable. Kim Fai angrily turned around, but the pimp was nowhere to be seen. He thought to himself, "Very good. Turns out they've divided up all my stuff." Thinking so, he turned back outside, guessing that yesterday's incident must have been caused by this general's drugging the wine. He angrily walked to the counter and saw the waiter standing there, holding his bundle of clothes in his hand, saying, "Dear sir, the bundle of your shirt has already been deposited at the counter." Obviously he still wanted to be rewarded with some silver. Kim Fai didn't say a word, took the bundle of clothes, conveniently took out some scrap money, held it in his hand and went straight to the shop door. Perhaps because of that silver, the pimp showed even more respect and saw him off. Kim Fai stopped walking, turned around and asked, "Where's my horse?" The officer's face frowned and he trembled as he replied, "Sir, your horse has been stolen by someone." The little guy thought it was the young man who was riding around. Kim Fai was angry and thought to himself, "It's this guy who caused trouble, it's definitely not wrong." He coldly said, "This is the reward for yesterday. You put an anesthetic in the wine for me to drink." As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed the acupressure point named Fokai. He was in unbearable pain, sweat poured out like rain, his mouth opened but he could not utter a word, he could only tremble and beg, "Dear sir, The family of a petty person still has an 80-year-old mother and a 3-year-old child, all of whom depend on the petty people to feed them. Please have mercy and help. He spoke while crying, looking extremely pitiful. Kim Fai smiled faintly and asked, "Who told you to drug yourself yesterday?" The officer's face was sad. He looked at Kim Fai but did not dare to answer. At that time, there were a few guests in the inn who heard the movement and ran out to see, but no one dared to speak up. Kim Fai said coldly, "If you don't answer, I'll leave." The lieutenant quickly used his left hand to hold his right hand, pleading urgently, "Dear sir, this poor man was forced by someone. Please spare my life." The customers in the inn saw that Kim Fai was not an easy person to deal with, so they all stood far away to observe. No one dared to intervene. Seeing that the common man refused to confess, Kim Fai chuckled, turned to Dong Phuong Min and said, "Brother Dong Phuong, let's go." Dong Phuong Min softly said yes, gently pulled the reins. The horse leisurely approached Kim Fai. The waiter saw that the two of them were really about to leave, so he ventured to whisper, "That black assassin Page." Kim Fai turned back and asked, "Is it really Black Sat Trang?" Having finished speaking, he conveniently threw a piece of silver and hit the Kuk Tri acupuncture point of the common man. He cried out, but the pain in his arm immediately disappeared, and the swelling gradually subsided. Everyone just had time to see the silhouette of a person appear and hear the horse bell ringing Long Kong, when Kim Fai jumped on the horse with Dong Phuong Min and raced straight into the distance. Chapter 16. De Sun Sun. Yin Sun is located in the north of Hebei province. The mountains are rugged, soaring to the sky, and on the mountains are dense forests that have never been exploited. The forest is so thick that sunlight can hardly penetrate all year round. That day, at the foot of the mountain suddenly appeared a middle-aged man, wearing a blue shirt, leisurely walking up the mountain path. As he walked, he looked up at the towering mountain peak, sighed softly, and muttered, "Ha! Perhaps this is indeed Yin Sun." Standing there watching for a moment, he continued climbing. After walking a little further, the man sat down to rest, looked around, and suddenly stared at a nearby mountain. That mountain stood as straight as a pen, halfway covered by clouds, only appearing dimly. On the top, the snow is covered with white. All year round it does not melt. The great man muttered again, "Maybe it's Bok Dao Fong." Having finished speaking, he lazily trudged on. The sky gradually darkened. After passing a mountainside, he breathed heavily and sat on a rock to rest, looking up at the sky. The sun has set in the west, and the birds are chirping and flying back to their nests. The great man sighed, raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead, pondered for a moment, then took out a small white box, filled with white pills. He poured out a pill, swallowed it, then hurriedly walked straight into the forest. Not long after, from behind an ancient tree appeared a handsome young man, pale face, long eyebrows, bright eyes, wearing a white shirt, holding a bundle of clothes in his hand. He raised his head to look at the towering mountain peak and muttered, "If I don't use my true power, I'm afraid it will be difficult to climb this mountain." That young man is Kim Fai. He went to Yin Sun to find the true bitch Fong to heal his injury. Along the way, he did not dare use his true energy to perform light kung fu, fearing that his strength would be further wasted, so it took 3 full days to reach his destination. Fortunately, thanks to the transformation, there was no trouble along the way. Now that he has arrived at Yin Sun, Kim Fai feels that if he does not restore his true appearance, he will be disrespectful to bitch Fong Tan Nan. Thinking so, he quickly took a single Hon Dung pill. As he walked up the mountain, suddenly before his eyes a red shadow flashed like fire. Moments later, a beautiful young woman appeared, wearing a red silk dress, a long sword on her back, and a majestic demeanor. She smiled, her teeth were white, and her voice softly called out, "Brother Dang." Kim Fai was startled and quickly turned around. He recognized that it was Van Sun Phi Fung Nan Fach Han Lai Hong, a disciple of Van Sun then Ni. Seeing Kim Fai return, Lai Hong was overjoyed. When she broke up, she wanted to confess her feelings right away, but for some reason, her eyes suddenly turned red and she softly called out, Dude. Looking at Kim Fai's pale face as if she was seriously ill, she couldn't help but feel sad. Tears fell freely, and continued chokingly. Dude, you've lost so much weight. But Kim Fai still remained polite, clasped his hands to greet her and then coldly asked, Is Miss Lai still healthy? Why doesn't the commander go with the lady? In fact, that night Lai Hong used an excuse to do personal things, separated from the NI and secretly followed Kim Fai all along the way. Even though Di Deng's order was magical, she always followed him. Wherever he went, she followed, just not letting him find out. It was only when she saw him taking medicine to restore his appearance and arriving at Yen's Sun that she appeared to meet him. From the first time they met, her heart was completely given to him. Along the way, she witnessed him having difficulty using martial arts. Despite his strong bravery, she felt both pity and heartache. But she still did not dare to appear early, afraid of his indifference, afraid of facing his cold attitude. Sure enough, she guessed right. Lai Hong tried to suppress his self-pity, bowed his head and replied softly, Tutor, doesn't go with little sister. Kim Fai still coldly asked, Are you the only one here? Lai Hong couldn't hold back anymore, bowed his head, tears fell like rain. Suddenly she widened her eyes, anger clearly visible on her face, and looked up at him. Kim Fai still stood still, his appearance arrogant, his eyes cold. Suddenly Lai Hong gritted his teeth, pursed his lips, raised his hand and slapped him twice on the cheek. A popping sound rang out. Kim Fai staggered back 2 steps, 2 small red handprints clearly visible on his pale face. As soon as he finished slapping, Lai Hong immediately regretted it. Tears fell freely, he covered his face with both hands and sobbed. Kim Fai coldly said, Miss Lai, is there anything else you want to tell me? Hearing that, Lai Hong was even more heartbroken and cried profusely. She wanted to turn around and leave, but she couldn't bear it. Kim Fai smiled faintly, suddenly turned around, used his true energy, performed the long Van Dun body technique, and disappeared as quickly as the wind. As soon as Lai Hong stopped crying, he raised his head and saw that he was no longer there, making his heart even more painful. While crying hoo-hoo, she muttered, This lady, sooner or later one day, will kill you. At that moment, a handsome young man appeared in the forest, wearing a light yellow AO dye, with an elegant appearance, slowly walking out. Seeing Lai Hong, he smiled and asked softly, Girl, who do you want to kill? Hearing the southern accent, Lai Hong did not know who the other person was, so he cried and angrily replied, Who made you interfere? The young man smiled slightly, still calmly saying, Of course I have no right to interfere, but, having said that, he stopped and waited for her to respond. Seeing that Lai Hong was silent, he continued asking, Why don't you raise your head to look at me? He was conceited about his appearance, thinking that every young girl who saw her would be moved. He wanted her to look at her, and at the same time, he wanted to see how beautiful and ugly she was to decide whether to follow her or not. Sure enough, Lai Hong immediately raised his head when he heard that. As soon as she saw the other person's face, she shivered slightly. This person is handsome, exuding nobility. His appearance resembles that of Kim Fai, except that his eyes are a bit small, his lips are thin, his nose is pointed and slightly crooked. He wears a light yellow AO dye, holds a fan of the same color, and has an elegant demeanor. If you don't consider those shortcomings, looking horizontally and vertically is really not much worse than Kim Fai. Lai Hong briefly thought, maybe this is Kim Fai's incarnation, so he asked resentfully, Who are you? The young man looked cheerful. Realizing that Lai Hong was a rare beauty among the young women he had seen, he rolled his eyes and smiled and replied, This is Hong Kai-vu. Seeing the other person keep rolling his eyes, Lai Hong silently thought, still pretending. Do you think I don't know who you are? Thinking so, she still sobbed and asked, Is your name really Hong Kai-vu? Hong Kai-vu laughed he. Yes, it is Mr. De Sun Hong Kai-vu. Lai Hong was secretly frightened. She knew that the De Sun sect was in Danan Mountain, bordering Yunnan, far away from here, and that its martial arts were strange, sublime, and unpredictable. In particular, The mountain master of that sect has rarely seen his face clearly. I only know that a few decades ago, in Dinan Mountain in western Yunnan, a person suddenly appeared claiming to be the master of Disun Mountain, with high martial arts skills, strange personality, and cruel tricks. He once publicly declared that his subordinate Disun would never set foot in the Central Plains, unless he had enough confidence to be invincible in the world. Then he would cancel his oath. Over the years, those who were expelled by Trung Nguyen martial arts came to Disun to join, and he accepted them all. Many people chased the traitor there to destroy him, but they were all defeated by him, making Disun's reputation more and more famous. No one dared to attack. Therefore, the Disun sect also had a deep hatred with the Trung Nguyen sects. Therefore, as soon as he heard the young man call himself Disun, Lai Hong was startled and thought to himself, could it be that he is not King Phi? After thinking about it, she continued asking, so why did the young master come here? Kai Vu saw that the beautiful girl was moved, so he softly replied, I heard the girl crying. I thought someone was oppressing me, so I quickly came to see, but unexpectedly. Lai Hong was still hesitating and thinking when Hong Kai Vu asked, is the lady's name Lai Hong? Lai Hong did not know that his reputation had spread to the gangsters, and his red shirt made it even easier to recognize. Hearing the other person call her name correctly, she silently snorted. He even knows my full name. Hong Kai Vu continued, is the command master strong? His question had a profound meaning, but after hearing it, Lai Hong glanced at him with eyes filled with affection and replied resentfully, my teacher has a very hot temper. Saying so, she secretly thought, it seems King Phi still loves me. She became more and more convinced that Hong Kai Vu was the reincarnation of King Phi, so she gradually stopped crying. Hong Kai Vu rolled his eyes a few times, chuckled, then softly asked, Miss Lai, it's getting dark, why are you standing here? Or are you waiting for someone else? Lai Hong glanced at him full of resentment and asked softly, young master, do you still hate your master, little sister? Hong Kai Vu was startled and thought to himself, how do you know I have enmity with your sect? But he was very scheming, so he smiled and replied, why should I hate her? Lai Hong was no longer melancholy, raised his head, smiled and asked, do you really no longer resent your teacher anymore? Seeing her smile, her face became even more brilliant. Hong Kai Vu was secretly happy and smiled and replied, of course not. Out of respect for Miss Lai, I no longer hate her. Dude, that's so kind. Saying so, Lai Hong thought to himself, King Phi, I won't expose you for now. Let's see how long you can keep pretending. Hong Kai Vu was also extremely pleased, silently calculating, this girl is really naive. This time, the young master will just play to her heart's content, and then kill her entire sect. That'll make her happy. After thinking about it, he happily raised his hand to hug her shoulder. Lai Hong blushed shyly, just smiled softly, not refusing at all. He took advantage of the situation and pulled her into his arms, smiling and asking, do you love me, Sister Hong? Lai Hong replied coyly, who loves the dude? Hong Kai Vu laughed, bent down and gently kissed her cheek, saying, let's go, why stay on this mountain? Lai Hong thought to himself, sometimes he pretends to be someone who doesn't know martial arts, sometimes he pretends to be someone from the Disun sect, but still believes and loves me anyway. Thinking so, she stood up straight, pretended to be angry and replied, who told you to come here? Hong Kai Vu chuckled, wrapping his arms around her waist, Sister Hong, let's go. Hearing him call her Hong sister, Lai Hong was overjoyed, leaned on his shoulder, and together slowly walked down the mountain. Chapter 17. Bitch Fong disperses people. King Phi left Lai Hong and immediately performed light attack, his body soaring like flying. But just after walking a while, he suddenly thought again, why am I so cruel? Leaving a love-stricken girl in the middle of a deserted mountain, not caring, that's really too much. Thinking of that, he slowed down his steps, then stopped completely and stood still. In his mind, the image of Lai Hong appeared. Her adorable yet pitiful appearance made him unable to leave. He quickly returned to his original place. At that moment, the laughter of a man and a woman suddenly rang out. Kim Fai immediately stopped and listened. He heard Lai Hong's voice echoing, "Young master is so kind." Next, the man's voice laughed and replied, "Do you love me?" Lai Hong replied coyly, "Who loves you?" Then a burst of laughter rang out. That laugh was like a knife cutting into the heart, making Kim Fai dizzy, almost collapsing on the spot. At this time, he realized that he really loved Lai Hong, but that love immediately turned into anger. He clenched his hands, punched each other hard, gritted his teeth, pursed his lips and said, "Lustful, shameless." He stomped his foot hard, then turned and left. He did not expect Lai Hong to be so lecherous. When he was cold to her, she cried bitterly, but without him for just a moment, she was able to lean into someone else's arms. It's so mean and low class. Thinking so, Kim Fai decided from now on not to care about her anymore, and towards the Nun Van's son, he would not be lenient either. In a fit of jealousy, he rushed away like crazy. Soon we reached the top of Bogdao Mountain. Here, the wind is bitterly cold, the snow is white, and many places are frozen and slippery, making it difficult to walk. He stood for a moment, letting out a breath. The true strength in his body had been consumed too much by the frantic running just now, making it difficult for him to breathe. The wind became colder and colder, but Kim Fai's spirit gradually became more relaxed. After breathing heavily for a while, he felt less uncomfortable, so he smiled and lowered his head to look down. He thought that all his thoughts had been washed away, and all his afflictions and sufferings had also disappeared. Standing still for a moment, he suddenly let out a long howl, then turned around behind the mountain and went straight. Behind Bogdao Farm is a black mountainside, covered with ice and snow. At that time, the sun had set to the west, night slowly fell. Kim Fai stood still, looking around in bewilderment. Suddenly a hoarse voice came from far away, like the voice of an old man. "That baby? Where are you from?" Kim Fai was startled and frightened. He looked around but saw no one. While in doubt, suddenly a fierce gust of wind was like an arrow aimed straight at the Fong Fu acupuncture point behind his head. The wind was unusually strong, tearing through the wind and making an amazing whirring sound. As soon as the sound of the wind entered his ears, that gust of wind was only 3 inches away from Fong Fu's grave. Kim Fai panicked, quickly held his breath, jumped 3 meters to the side to avoid. As soon as he stood firm, he heard a faint laugh accompanied by a voice. "You know the Long Van engine light attack? Really good. So why do you dare set foot on my Bogdao Farm?" As soon as he finished speaking, Kim Fai saw a tall old man appear in front of him, with messy hair, bare feet, and wearing a green robe. He looked arrogant, had an angry expression, looked straight at him and shouted, "Kid, who's here on orders?" Seeing the muscular old man, his cold face, eyes shooting out a bright light, Kim Fai took a step back and coldly replied, "In my opinion, such a sneak attack is not a glorious act." The old man suddenly raised his face to the sky, laughed like crazy and spoke, "Okay. Very good." Unexpectedly, today the old man would have a young boy come all the way here to teach him like that. The voice rang out like a bronze bell, shaking all around, the buzzing echo echoing endlessly. Seeing that, Kim Fai thought to himself, this old man's power is truly profound. Could he be Bitch Fong Tan Nan? Thinking of that, he immediately clasped his hands in ceremony and said solemnly, "Seniors and juniors came here just to find a martial arts senior who had been missing for a long time." The old man suddenly stopped laughing and asked in a low voice, "You looking for me?" Kim Fai replied immediately, his voice decisive, "Bitch Fong Tan Nan." The old man looked at him with wide eyes and coldly continued, "What's the point of finding him?" Kim Fai took out Dong Fuang Min's flute from his body, raised both hands and said, "Junior has something to report to Senior." As soon as he saw the jade flute, the old man's face immediately softened and asked, "Where did you get this flute?" Kim Fai guessed that the old man was probably Bitch Fong Tan Nan, at least closely related, so he replied solemnly, "This jade flute was given to me by a friend of my junior, told to bring him here as a token to meet his master, Bitch Fong Tan Nan. The old man laughed heartily. This old man is Bitch Fong Tan Nan. So what's your name? Kim Phi pretended to be surprised, quickly bowed, and replied, Junior Dang Kim Phi, please see Senior. Bitch Fong Tan Nan lightly waved his sleeve and said, no need to be so polite. Kim Phi only felt a gentle force helping him stand up. Bitch Fong Tan Nan immediately asked with a serious face, who is the commandant? Kim Phi pondered for a moment and did not answer. Tan Nan continued asking, is he in Tien a subordinate of Fantasy Tien? Kim Phi nodded slightly. Tan Nan says, give me the jade flute. Kim Phi immediately handed over the flute. Tan Nan took it, glanced at him and said coldly, now you can go down the mountain. Kim Phi angrily asked again, what does the senior mean by saying that? Tan Nan smiled and replied, if you are not a descendant of Fan Ma, then you are also a disciple of Jia Am too. If you don't respect Men Ni, this old man will absolutely not let you leave the mountain so easily. Those words touched Kim Phi's pride. He smiled faintly and replied, okay, Junior, I'll take my leave now. Just as he turned to leave, Tan Nan suddenly shouted, what are you doing up here? Even though he didn't want to answer, Kim Phi still turned around and coldly said, no matter what, the junior doesn't dare to bother the senior anymore. Tan Nan was extremely surprised. He did not expect this young man to dare to be so tough in front of him. Seeing Tan Nan staring with wide eyes, Kim Phi did not say another word, quickly clasped his hands in ceremony and said, Junior, please leave. Bitch Fong Tan Nan pointed at acupuncture points and shouted loudly, if you have something to say it directly, no need to hide it and make the old man more angry. Hearing that, Kim Phi thought to himself, huh. I wonder if I'm making you angry, or it's you who's making me angry. But he still calmly replied. Since the senior was determined to ask, the junior had to obey. Bitch Fong Tan Nan suddenly realized that this young man's personality was very suitable for him, so he nodded. Okay, just say it. Kim Phi thought for a long time and still couldn't speak, because he didn't know how to open his mouth properly. Bitch Fong Tan Nan suddenly softened his voice. Baby, just say it. If it's within my ability, the old man will definitely help you. Kim Phi remained silent, bowing his head in deep thought. Seeing that, Tan Nan said, Kid, when I saw your unusual expression, I immediately knew you were poisoned, right? Having said that, he raised his hand to check his pulse and examined Kim Phi's face. After a while, his face gradually revealed a look of horror. He pondered for a long time before letting go and saying, follow the old man here. Kim Phi didn't say a word and quietly followed. Coming to the mountainside covered with snow and ice, he saw an ancient pine tree so big that two people could not hug it. Next to the tree trunk is a low door, only about half a person high. If you don't pay attention, it will be difficult to realize that there is a place to live. Bitch Fong Tan Nan stood in front of the door, turned around and said, please come in. He opened the door to let Kim Phi enter. After passing through the cave entrance, Kim Phi had to go down a few wooden steps to reach a quite large stone room. Inside, the decoration is very simple, for empty walls, only a few grass carpets on the ground. Bitch Fong Tan Nan invited Kim Phi into the stone room, told him to sit on the grass, and he sat opposite, then told him to close his eyes and bring good luck. Suddenly, two streams of green mist rose from his hands, forming a stream of air, shooting straight at Kim Phi's Boy Tam acupoint. Kim Phi shivered, feeling a stream of heat enter his body, running throughout his acupuncture points. He quickly coordinated his efforts to guide that heat flow to converge at the intersection of the two Namd Dak veins. 2 hours passed, both of them sweated like rain. At that moment, Kim Phi's face became even more pale. Because of the pain, his face grimaced continuously. Finally, Tan Nan withdrew his hand and sat down to calm his breath. Not long after, he stood up, opened the wooden cabinet, took out a small bottle, poured 3 pills into his hand and gave it to Kim Phi, his voice somewhat apologetic. The old man's strength is not enough to eliminate all the poison in the noble man's body. I had to give my nephew 3 Hoa Van Hoon tablets. Taking them would ensure that the poison would not cause any danger within 3 months. After giving the medicine, he continued, "There is only one way left. You must go to Dak Long Dam on Chao Lut Song Mountain to find Dak Long Tu, a martial arts masterpiece who has been anonymous for more than 100 years. If he is willing to treat it, he may be able to eradicate it completely." Kim Phi finished taking 3 pills and bowed in gratitude. Bitch Fong Tan Nan looked at him for a long time, then said, This time, the old man couldn't help his nephew. He felt very ashamed, so, having said that, he took out a small jade bottle and gave it to him. This is a first aid medicine prepared by the old man himself, with extremely miraculous effects. No matter how severe the internal or external injury is, drinking it can cure it immediately. The old man gave the sage a gift to take with him. Unexpectedly, Bitch Fong Tan Nan's attitude would change so quickly. Kim Phi quickly replied, "The great kindness of the senior, the junior will not dare to forget for the rest of his life." But, having said that, Kim Phi did not dare to raise his hand to receive the medicine bottle. Seeing that, Bitch Fong Tan Nan laughed. "Please take it, the old man still has a lot left." The old man only hopes that in the future, his gentle brother will advise how Tien's subordinates not to continue doing the same things as before. Kim Phi clearly understood what he meant, nodded in agreement, then reached out to receive the medicine bottle. That night, he stayed in the cave. The next morning, we left the mountain and set out to Chao Lut Song. This time, thanks to the fire cloud ring, the poisonous gas in his body was concentrated in one place. So Kim Phi could display all his abilities and his movements were as fast as lightning. You just finished listening, Volume 3, of the series, Ancient Swordplay. The Divine Palm appears. Please comment your feelings after listening to the story, and don't forget to subscribe to hear the latest stories.